Hello, we're here today talking with Harry Hay, who is well known as a fairy godmother of the gay liberation movement in the United States and around the world, and also was the founder of the Radical Faeries. Welcome, Harry.
Thank you, dear. This is an interesting conversation. I'm pleased to be here today to do all of this. And I didn't know I was a fairy godmother for all those people.
Indeed you are.
But anyway, I don't think of it in those terms. I only think of myself as elder brother, because what I have always been doing ever since I was little was looking for my family. Looking for my family, as we say these days, the family of conscious choice. As to be separated from your blood family, who may not necessarily be of your conscious choice at this time. Right. What we have been doing for the last 50 years, shall we say, is reinventing ourselves. Because actually, we have been, my feeling is that we have been in existence for many, many thousands of years. We have served as third gender men in many different cultures all around the world, and as a matter of fact, still do. But in our particular culture, although I think we serve very well as part and parcel of the folk of Britain and Western Europe, for example, up to the time of the Inquisition. From the time of the Inquisition forward, we have been obliterated by both the church and the state as dangerous elements, and as such, obliteration simply meant that we were being wiped out, and all of our culture was being wiped out along with it, and all of our influence was being wiped out along with it. So at this particular point now, when our kind of influence is so desperately needed, not only in the United States, but throughout the world, we have to, in this process, those of us who feel responsible for it, we have to reinvent ourselves.
How have you been involved in gathering gay men and other people together to talk about their common experiences, like, for instance, with the Radical Faeries?
Well, I would say probably the very first time that we were able to get groups of people like that to come together is right at the beginning of what is going to be called the Mattachine Society. And the very first time that we all came together in December of 1950, or let me put it this way, the way we decided, the five of us came together in November of 1950. And I remember the very first time that we sat out on an open hillside looking over Silver Lake in Los Angeles. And it was on a Saturday afternoon, and a windy afternoon. And we were all sitting out there knowing that we were all of a caliber, knowing that we were all gay men, not necessarily knowing each other personally, but simply sensing that we were all of the same color. And the whole idea of sitting together as a group of conscious men, suddenly not tearing somebody else apart, or which was the usual way by which people sort of felt good about each other, was, you know, if you and I want to feel good, we'll run down everybody else we know, which by contrast makes us feel good, which is what happens with people who have a very negative image of themselves. And we all came together as, we came together as radicals, as organizers, as trade union directors, as trade union educators, and so on. And we were talking together, but suddenly realized we had no way of knowing what kind of questions we were going to ask each other. Only that we know that we wanted to move together and to organize people, because we were very much afraid at that time that this is 1950, you see, and this is just at the outset of the Korean War. And we were aware of the fact that the country is moving towards what we might refer to as a police state. And in a police state, you always have to have a scapegoat. A scapegoat is always very useful, because you can always threaten people with the fact that they will be connected with this scapegoat group, and therefore find themselves on the outside of the society. And in order to keep yourself from being scapegoated, you will all of a sudden do whatever it is the people are asking you to do. And so it's a useful way of sort of frightening people into terrorizing and to thinking in your directions. And we were thinking, you know, if we were going to be finding ourselves being scapegoated, we were already being scapegoated by the loyalty oath, which had been in existence by that time for 2 years, and the Joseph McCarthy witch hunt in the Congress were all very much around us. So that we realized that scapegoating would not as it had been done in Germany, would not be done in this country. The Jews would not be the scapegoats this time because of the Holocaust. Everybody was very conscious of that. And black people wouldn't be, although they had been used in the South as scapegoats, they wouldn't be being scapegoated at this particular moment because they're already being organized. And the idea of the poll tax was no longer popular in the South. These things were beginning. Lynching was no longer popular as an activity. So consequently, all of these things were being looked at by the law, and stringent legal situations were being taken care of to take care of these matters. So it wouldn't be them. The point is it would have to be us. And we gay people would be the ones that everybody would love to hate anyway. And so consequently, we would be the natural scapegoats. And what we had to do was to start to organize. We had to find out who we were and begin to tie ourselves together and make ourselves as safe as possible.
This question of finding out who we are has guided you for many decades now. Mm-hmm. What kind of insight do you have today about towards answering that question? Who are we?
We are. Well, let's put it this way. I would suggest that Great Mother Nature doesn't make mistakes. Oftentimes people have said, well, what has actually happened? This has been a mistake, and I'm a man in a woman's body, or I'm a woman in a man's body. These are the kind of stereotypes you've been hearing about for decades and decades. I don't think the Great Mother makes any mistakes. I think that she provides for the whole wide variety of people to come out. And each one of these sets of people all have relationships to one another, which holds the whole thing in balance. The co-conscious tribes of Africa, the co-conscious tribes of the traditional peoples here in the United States had always had these interesting third gender men and gender women who had particular responsibilities to the rest of the tribe.
Well, you've drawn many connections in your writings and in our conversations in fairy gatherings between the roles that men or not men, like the fools and other folks like Berdache in Native American societies, have played, the roles that those people have played in those societies. How do you identify personally with those roles in your own life? How do you live out in your own life a kind of a fool or a third gender identity?
Well, I myself, for instance, would say that, well, when I was 8 years old, the boys called me a sissy or a girl. As a matter of fact, the way they did it was that they would say that I threw a ball like a girl or a sissy. What's the difference? And because of the fact that I probably had more friends among the girls than I had among the boys, I asked the girls if I threw a ball like a girl. And they said, no, you don't throw a ball like a girl. You throw it like a sissy. And as far as girls are concerned, sissy and girl are very different. Mm-hmm. As far as the boys are concerned, sissy and girl are the same thing. Usually when I'm talking to a large group of people, or I'm talking to college kids or somebody who, we're all in a circle at this point. I don't like captive audiences. And so in a circle, we're all sort of sharing with one another. I would always say, how many of you guys told you threw a ball like a girl or a sissy? And most of the hands go up. And mine goes up along with it, just to show that we're all part and parcel of having part of the same experience.
Yes.
And then I asked, well, how many of you believed it? And most of the guys your age said, well, I guess I did. And then I said, well, all right, and so you bought your first sexist remark. Mm-hmm. Because after all, this is you ask the girls. You don't simply take the boys' word for what is true about the girls. And in the same regard, these same guys would be the ones who would always say that I was effeminate. And I have to say that I'll have to admit I never felt particularly masculine. But I never felt feminine either. I didn't feel either one. And so when the girls were saying to me, you don't throw a ball like a girl, you throw like a sissy, what they're saying is, you're not a boy, because the boys know who the boys are, but you're not like a girl either. Neither, which is neither one. And I said, that's interesting, because neither boy or girl leaves you free to be anybody you choose.
What would you like to see the mainstream gay movement or gay so-called community do, or what would you like to see changed in it over, whatever period of time over the next 10 or 20 years? And what kinds of insights do you think that fairies specifically could bring to that change?
Well, honey, I think we're all aware of the fact that looking out in the assimilationist crowd, or going to the baths occasionally you can do, and listen to the people talking, and recognize that what you're hearing from every one of these people underneath all of the braggadocio that you hear on top and the show off and stuff that passes for conversation. You know that there is a feeling of fear. There's a feeling of not liking yourself. There's a feeling of self-hate. There's a feeling of shame. There's a feeling of guilt. All of those things you would like very much to see them get rid of. All of them would make it possible for them to ventilate that and get rid of it and then feel good about themselves. Love themselves as you know you love yourself. All of us who have gone through that experience want this for the whole world. We know perfectly well. Think of the millions of our brothers who go to shrinks in order to get rid of these shames and guilts, and they pay out thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars over 20 and 30 and 40 years, and they still don't get rid of that guilt. And then they come to a fairy gathering, and they go through a couple of workshops, and then all of a sudden they wake up one morning and say, you know, that guilt's gone. What do you think you feel? Of course you want everybody to be able, but we also know something else. As fairies, we know something very important. You can send out the call, you can tell what can happen at a fairy gathering, but the person who comes must come of his own choice. We don't we don't persuade, we don't cajole, we don't twist arms, we don't promise things if in the case they come. You send out the call, you say what's going to happen, you say what could happen, but it's up to you. You have to decide for yourself. And in that business of deciding for yourself, you tell us, you come to the fairy gathering, we invite you to, as I said at the very beginning, to tear off the ugly green frog skin, as in the old fairy prince story, remember, and find the beautiful fairy prince underneath. But you do that. And when you do that, then you tell me how you want me to see you, and I will see you that way, if in turn you will see me the way I want to be seen. And this is an exchange we do, but each one of us does it consciously, and each one does it for himself.
It's very powerful. Do you have a specific message that you would like to give to gay youth, to young people who are just struggling with coming out in a homophobic society?
Well, you know, I've talked to an awful lot of young men in that particular period, either coming out or not coming out, who necessarily know that they know that inside the shame that they have been put on them by the outside society, inside there's a golden dream for which they may not even have words yet, but they know that it's there. They know that there's something wonderful about it. The message that I have to say is that golden something within you is the most powerful and the most beautiful and the most perfect thing you will ever have in your life. Guard it with all your care and try to find words for it as soon as you possibly can, because that's where your truth is. Regardless of what anybody else says, within yourself, that is where your truth is, and follow it, my dear, and you will find your beautiful fairy prince at the other end.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for the interview today. It's been wonderful talking to you, Harry. And it would be wonderful to talk to you again sometime.
I hope so.
Yes.
I truly do hope so. I enjoyed it very much myself. I love to look at a beautiful young fairy prince. It's a lovely thing to do.
Bless you.